Welcome to the lifestyle segment of the Weekend Show. In honor of Mental Health Awareness Month, we're diving into honest conversations about mental well being, breaking the stigma, and exploring how we can all show up better for ourselves and for those around us. So, joining me to have this conversation, we have Jakpo Ukweku, who is a mental health advocate. Good morning, and thanks so much for joining us on the show.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Yes, so May, Mental Health Awareness Month.
Yeah.
I'm very particular when it comes to mental health because I believe everyone should take it as important as their physical health.
course.
So, why is Mental Health Month so important? Why do you think we should celebrate it, apart from what I just said?
So I think why it's important is because naturally we don't pay as much attention to like our mental health as we do to mental health. So for me, I feel like it's an opportunity for us to start to like think about it more deeply, pay more attention to it, and be mindful. So it's one of my most exciting months because I feel it's a time we get to remember that we're human. I think when we go about our lives, we think like we're superhuman. We think like we can just go, go, go. But I think it's an opportunity to just stop, take stock of your life, and see like how you can live more comfortably mentally. I think.
Yeah. What are some common misconceptions people have about mental health?
So the conversation itself, people think when you talk about mental health, they only think about it from trying to get help perspective. But I think generally, the same way you pay attention to your physical health, you want to pay attention to your mental health. When the conversation comes out, it doesn't mean that you're crazy, it doesn't mean that you're unwell. It just means that like you're taking care of your emotional, psychological, and social well-being. So the main misconception there is that people think it's talk about being crazy, and I feel we need to be more sensitive towards it. And another misconception people have is that like, oh, conversations like being depressed, they feel like, oh, these people can just snap out of it.
Yeah.
Right? But a lot of times there are a lot of deeper issues that people are facing that because they haven't addressed it, it's just like spiraling into other different things.
So there's this common saying online, on X in particular. In no way am I saying it's accurate, but it says that every Nigerian has a mental health issue, basically because of the country we live in. I would like to hear your thoughts on that.
So there's no doubt that being Nigerian puts a lot of strain on your mental health for sure. But I don't know if that is correct.
That's why I said it's not accurate
But I
in
do
any way.
think it's important for Nigerians to pay more attention to it because you think about how the conditions of how we live, you think about how intense the environment is, you think about the hardship. So obviously there's a lot of strain, and I think Nigerians need to be and I think Nigerians need to be kinder to themselves too. We underestimate the importance of being kind. And one of the things that you find is like if you're not kind to yourself, it's difficult to be kind to somebody else. So I think it's important that we think about this thing more deeply. Think about it more deeply. But why I'm excited now is because there's a lot more conversations. Like back in the day when I got into this conversation, and I remember like my friends would make fun of me and it's like all this mental health talk that you're doing. Did he pay you? And I'll be like, dude, it's deeper than that. If you've been through your own dark places and you've been able to come out of it, you realize that it's not as easy, right? I went through some things in my personal life that made me realize that like I wasn't in as much control as I thought, and emotionally I wasn't as stable as I thought. So I think it's important that we really, really pay attention to it for sure, on a personal level and also a societal level as well. Because one thing you mentioned was the stigma.
Yes.
So one of the things you see about mental health is like people are too ashamed to seek help. People feel like, oh, if I open up about my mental health, people make fun of me or people think I'm weak. But that is not the case at all. Not at all.
So interesting, you mentioned kindness because my next question is, how can we, as a society, even individually, support people that are, going through mental health issues? How can we be there for them? In what ways?
So I think one thing that is important is listening, right? You want to make people comfortable enough to open up about what they're going through. And like you said, stigma is one of the major things. And especially in like black men, right? One of the greatest killers of black men in the world is suicide. And this is because black men have this mindset where they have to be tough, always. It's not okay to show any form of weakness. So I think one of the things for when you're dealing with men as well is like you want to make them feel comfortable. Like their partners need to make them feel comfortable. Their spouses or their girlfriends or their sisters and their brothers need to make them feel like you can speak up, right? Also, I think another thing we can try to do is be more sensitive and more mindful with the kind of communication that we put out, right? Because you don't know how something you put out can trigger the next person. And also be mindful of your words as well, because some of the things that I've dealt with have come from some words that people told me back in the day, and I start to take it as mine. So I think being mindful of people's, how you use your words, paying attention to people, giving them an opportunity to speak up, and also encouraging a lot of physical activities. I think people underestimate the importance of being physically fit, because like when your body's mobile, when you feel like you can move better, like you tend to be more stable mentally. So I think anybody that has, another thing that you have to do, you have to be very mindful of people around you, right? Because with conversations around suicide, when people look back at those situations, you realize, oh, I realized that this person that was always bubbly became reclusive. There's a reason. And one thing we find as well is like these mental health issues, when they come, they start really young. Like some kids go through a lot of trauma, but because of the African society that we live in, kids don't feel like they can speak up, right? So we have a lot of conversations where kids have been molested and taught strongly, and they can't speak up because they feel like, oh, daddy would judge me or mommy would judge me. So I think it's important for us as a society that we are more mindful in general, definitely.
Being more mindful is really important,
Yeah.
particularly online, where anyone with a smartphone could
Yeah,
just say anything
yeah,
to anybody
yeah.
without knowing what the other person is
Of
going
course.
through. So, which brings me to my next question: what role does social media play in mental health today? Is it, would you say it's positive, it's negative? Is it a bit of both?
I think now, so I work in communication as well. Like one of the things that you realize is we are exposed to so much more information than we've ever been exposed to. And it's not just about the amount of information, it's the pace at which it's coming. So one of the things I feel that is important for you as an individual, you have to take charge of your mental health, of your social media space. Because whether you like it or not, when this consuming all this a lot of information, you don't know when you start to take things that don't belong in your head, right? So definitely social media plays a very big role because of how much pressure you can feel. And it's also that factor of comparison, right? So back in the day, there wasn't a lot for you to compare yourself with. But every day now on social media, you're seeing things that are really pushing people. And another thing that happens as well is like people forget that social media is in real life. So they take the things that they see on social media and they own it. Meanwhile, for instance, if it's a marketing campaign, the marketing campaign is tailored at making you buy stuff, making you feel a certain way. So I think with social media now, one of the things I always preach is mindfulness, right? Be mindful of how you consume, control what you consume. Like it's not because it's on social media you have to take it. And then you see a lot of people nowadays go this very fanatic route where they start to support celebrities and start to embody these celebrities' lives, take their pain as their pain. I think social media is great from a communication perspective, but then, like everything, moderation is key. I think you have to be very mindful. Like, give yourself time off it, right? Don't consume it. And one of the things I always say is, there's a way that when you wake up in the morning, right, you don't want your phone to be the first thing you pick up. Right. What happens to you then is like you don't get a chance to decide how your day goes, right? The information you consume at that moment decides how your day goes. So, yes, social media is great, like I said, but it's important for you to control how you use it and be mindful as well.
Living in Nigeria, right? We have a very religious culture. Where does religion come into this? Because I feel a good number of us grew up with parents who, when you say anything about mental health, they're like, God forbid, it's not your portion, my enemies, this, that. So how do we deal with all of that in, changing things, the stigma, for example, on it?
Yeah, so it's so interesting that you say that. Yeah, so yes, religion has played a very big role, but then what I feel with the conversation is you have to find ways to create opportunities for different parts of your life, right? So I think there's place for religion in your life, right? For your spirituality and things like that, but then you also have to create space for your emotional well-being. We have to separate emotions from spirituality. I think that's one of the things that happens because what that does is when you don't focus on the emotional and mental aspect and you start to go the spiritual route, it doesn't solve the problem. What it does is it just kind of like kicks it deeper in. You know what I mean? So, yes, religion is great. However, like people within the religious sect also have to let people know that, like, yes, you can pray, yes, you can do everything that you need to do, but at the same time, you have to do some things for yourself. I think in our context, in the African context, one of the things that we try to do is we try to contract things that we can do for ourselves to religion. And we come from a society where miracles are a big thing, right? We believe in like praying for things to happen. But then I do believe we have to separate that from things like hard work, putting in the work. I always have this running joke with my friends where I say, oh, when people go give testimonies, they talk about, oh, I prayed and then this happened. They don't talk about the work that they put in. Right? So someone else will see that and say, okay, I'm going to pray, right? I'm going to pray for me to get a job that I want. I'm going to pray to get a life that I want. And they don't work. And when it doesn't happen, they start to feel sad and feel, like, why is it the prayer is not working for me? But then you have to understand that, like, as a human being, you have to take responsibility for yourself. Very important that you do that.
Yeah.
And there's nothing that your pastor can do. There's nothing that your imam can do. There's nothing that any of your religious or spiritual leaders can do for you. But you have to just do it for yourself. And another thing I feel that's important is the same way when you have issues with your physical health, you go and seek help. We have to be open to therapy as well, right? It's something that is becoming more widespread. But some of the issues that they face, there's the cost implication of it. So instead of going to see a therapist, why don't you just pray about it? But I do feel with the mental health bill that was passed some years ago, there's starting to be more investment in the space. So I think that would definitely change as we go along.
Can you share a personal experience or an experience of, with someone maybe you've worked with or something that changed your view on mental health?
So for me, what really changed is like my whole foray into this started when I was like about 20.
Okay.
I was in university about to graduate, and when it was time to graduate, it was a struggle because I had to be very serious, and so I got to a point where I felt like I let my family down. I felt like I let everybody around me. I felt like I let myself down, and it took me to a really dark place. And what was interesting about that was I looked fine on the outside. Like people around me didn't understand what it is that I was going through, how much I didn't like myself, how much I didn't feel good about myself. But then with time, I started to read some books, I started to have some conversations. And I realized one of the things I was facing is I was only engaging with one version of myself, right? I was only engaging with people's perception about me. I was only engaging with myself because I hadn't really studied more and tried to know myself. So when I snapped out of it, I realized that like there are a lot of people dealing with this as well, right? Because it kind of forced me to have some real conversations with people older than me, and I realized that what I was going through wasn't peculiar to me. There were a lot of people that were experiencing it, and when you experience someone commit suicide, and you've seen people around, one of the things that really scares you is like people tell you like, "Well, I thought this guy was okay." Do you know what I mean? So because of that, it just made me a bit more sensitive to it. And now I realize that, like, yes, we can do everything right on a physical perspective, but if we don't pay attention to our mental health, like, it's really, because the reality of it is when you don't feel right mentally, there's hardly anything that you could do.
True.
And people don't understand how paralyzing that feeling can be when you're in a dark place. And some of all these things is like there's certain things that would just trigger it, right? So one of the things that I started to learn for me is I started to feel a certain way when I see certain posts because it started to make me feel pressured. So one of the first things I started to do is like if I see something that doesn't feel right, I mute it, right? Because you talk to yourself, it's like, this is my phone, it's my headspace. Why am I consuming information that would? So for me, I started to learn the importance of being very mindful and selective about what I consume. And it's kind of helped me. But you know what, like there's some days that are really dark. And like, regardless of regardless when you work in the space as well, and you're exposed to some of all these conversations, you want to be able to protect yourself from it as well. So yeah, it's a sensitive thing for me, but I'm glad that like I can sit down here and speak about it because when you were asking me now, it just took me back, and I remembered how I wouldn't, if you had told me that I would come and be able to speak like this, I wouldn't believe it. But so because of that, I know that it's possible to go in a dark place and come out when you seek help.
Yeah, I'm really happy that you're able to, heal,
Yeah.
and that you're using your voice to do amazing things. But just before we go, what message would you give to someone who is watching now and who is dealing with one mental health issue and another?
So I think one of the first things I would say is be kind to yourself. Don't feel like there's anything specifically wrong with you. Be open to seek help. Speak to somebody. Like no man or woman is an island. And another thing I also advise is the concept of gratitude. We underestimate the power of being grateful for things, because one of the things that I find is very telling in this conversation is that feeling of hopelessness, right? When you feel like things are not working around you, but when you are grateful, you start to see the things that are working in your favor. Another thing that I would say is try and be part of communities. They help as well. So I'm very active in sports. I do like team sports, play football. I try to look for outlets outside the regular. So I would write, go for spoken word poetry.
Okay.
But then physical fitness is a big factor as well. Because one of the things that you see when you're unwell mentally, like there's this lackadaisical feeling that you have, lethargic. You don't feel like doing anything. So one of the ways to combat that is physical fitness. Like exercising helps a lot, going for walks, but then also know the things that trigger you as well. If something or someone or an experience that you're engaging with is affecting you, just cut it off, right? And I think you have to start to take responsibility for your feeling. Don't be forced to go to places that you don't feel like. Don't be forced to do things. Not because A is doing it means that you should do it. And also, social media is not real life.
Oh.
Social media
That's
isn't real
that's
life.
a very good place
Social media is not
to
real
end
life.
it. Social
Yeah.
media truly is not
Yeah.
real life. Thank you so much, Dr. for
Thank you
this
so much.
amazing conversation. As he has said, and as I said earlier, treat your mental health as important as you treat your physical health. It is very, very necessary. And don't forget to celebrate all through the month of May, Mental Health Awareness Month. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
All right, we have so much more coming up on the weekend show. Do stay with us.